I'm here at a distillery. It's unlike anywhere else you're going to find in Scotland. This is the Port of Leith Distillery. It's been built vertically and it's got a claim to being the world's tallest distillery. We're going to go inside to find out about all the stages that go towards making whiskey and creating flavour.
We're on the fourth floor of the distillery. Up here we need malted barley, we need water, and it works its way down the building and becomes spirit out the bottom. So to get it up here, we have this great chain and disc mechanism here, which is lifting the malt up this pipe and all the way along into our mill. So, you know, this is barley as it comes from the farm. So this is before it's even been malted.
Okay.
And this is after the milling process. You have what we call grist.
Yeah.
So this has been malted and ground into this sort of chunky flour. And the exact consistency of that is very important for the next process.
So we start here at the top of the process, I suppose, and then we follow it down the stairs where the mashing takes place.
Indeed, yes. We're basically in one big void. I mean, if you look at the floor here, you can see it's an open mesh flooring. So it's one massive space. And actually you'll notice as we go down the building, the temperature differential as we go down. So up here, we're about 8 degrees centigrade warmer than we are down on the still floor. And we're finding that temperature differential through the distillery is actually having an impact on our whiskey as well. This is where some visitors suffer a little bit from vertigo, but you're all right?
Yeah, it's a good view.
Yeah, all good, as long as there's barriers.
So this is coming down to where the mashing is taking place.
Yeah, exactly, and to some extent maybe the most important floor in the distillery, because this is where we've really focused on yeast and fermentation and flavour creation, because this is ultimately where we're creating that flavour that's going to be refined through the distillation process. So, and then step one is mashing. So this is our mash tun. So you saw we had 1,500 kilos of grist upstairs, and that comes down straight through that hole in the ceiling there and into the mash tun. And then we mix it with water, and we mix it 3 times basically, and each water is a different temperature, and we have the rakes inside, and you can see them just in there. They are moving very, very slowly around to agitate the grist and make sure we're getting the enzymes and all the sugars out of that grist, and then that water gets drawn off and starts to fill one of the washbacks around here. So we have 7 washbacks of fermentation vessels. So at that stage, we have a washback full of lovely sugary wort, and that's ready for the fermentation process.
So this is where your specially sourced yeast is really doing its magic.
And you're going to notice this incredible fruity aroma. Oh yeah, that's coming straight off there. So this is our BE256, one of the Belgian ale strains that we work with, and just giving these incredible primary fruit flavours. Again, we're using brewing strains of yeast here, which are slightly less efficient. A lot of distilleries use distiller's yeast, and we use a proportion of that too, but that is geared towards faster, more efficient fermentations. At the moment, I think we're circa 72 hours on our fermentations, but it depends on the yeast strain. So there we go, and that will bubble away and create a wash, which is almost like a halfway beer, and that's ready for distillation downstairs on the still floor. On the left there, with all the steam coming out of it, that's our wash still. So that's the first still in the process. Inside, we've got a steam coil that's heating up the liquid inside. And so but surely the vapor rises up and goes along the line arm at the top there. And on the left, just obscured by these pipes, you've got the condenser. And in there, you've got 24 little pipes with cold water going through them, and the vapor hits that and condenses, and our distillate comes through. And actually, that comes through here on our spirit safe. So not distilling right now, so you can't see anything flowing, but actually this one dripping here, that's the wash still with low wines coming off. So that gets collected downstairs in our spirit tank, and then it's ready to go for its second distillation. And that's the next still on the right there, our spirit still.
Yep.
As you can see, this one's got a slightly different shape. So we've got this bulbous neck and a slightly sort of thinner neck as well. So again, same process of heating the liquid inside and the vapor rising. But this time we're going to get a bit of reflux, is where the vapor hits the side of the still, and it condenses on the side and falls back down again. And every time it's doing that, it's actually interacting with the copper as well. So we like a bit of reflux at this stage of the distillation process, hence the different shape. But eventually that vapor will make its way over the line arm again at the top and into the condenser, and that comes through to our spirit safe here.
But it's fascinating from looking around here, like every aspect of this process has some impact on the final flavour of the whisky you're creating. You know, looking at the still shapes, and I suppose even the angle of the line arm, and then the cut that you take when the new make spirit comes off the still. Every aspect of what we've been looking at has some effect on the final flavour of the whisky.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's amazing just how many things are having an influence. I mean, the one that blew my mind, you know, upstairs when we were looking at the mash tun, when we first started, our rake was moving at a speed that our distiller wasn't happy about, because it was extracting cereal notes that he liked but he couldn't control. So we had to swap in a gear so we could move that rake even more slowly and control the extent to which we were getting those flavours. So even the movement of the rake upstairs is influencing our flavour, every single bit, and that alchemy creates the spirit, the DNA of Ported Leaf Distillery that is unique to us.
You can pick any of these new make and you can give it a nose. The DNA of it, you know, I look at it as a flavor triangle. Yeah. So you've got the base. The base on each of them is the cereal.
Yeah.
You got a very nice kind of a digestive, I call it jammy Dodgers.
Yeah.
That's one kind of biscuit you get, because raspberry jam and that biscuity kind of that cereal base.
Yeah, for sure.
That's the heart of the spirit here.
Yeah.
Along over that, that's the the heart or the base. Then you have the body, and the body you'll understand more by tasting it. So again, layers, oiliness, mouth coating, creaminess. It's the texture.
Yeah.
A little bit of nuttiness.
Yeah.
But I put it as oily character.
Yeah.
It's that mouth coating, oily, a bit what do you call it, Moorish.
Yeah. It really remains on the palate.
Remains on the palate. So there you'll find every character comes together, it's cohesive, it's balanced.
Yeah.
And then you have the top. So the triangle, the top tip of the triangle, and here that's the fruits, the raspberry that I was talking about. It's more of autumnal fruits.
Okay.
And that's very important, because that's where we get to this sample. Because these three are very similar. This is the 100% special yeast, which, as I said, is really good. It creates some really kind of, creamy, has a little lactone and a little bit of that fruity notes. But by itself, it's not it. It is very one-dimensional.
Yeah.
And that's where I said, we started dialing in a little bit more of distiller's yeast, working a little bit more on the profile, because that by itself, it might smell as a decent new make, but it's not a good new make to mature into whiskey.
Okay.
Because that's the final product.
Okay.
And I just wanted to showcase you the depth that we can create, co-pitching brewer's yeast with distiller's yeast, and then trialing everything that we are trying to do here to create more of a cohesive product. So we sit more in this range here, and that's the house style for Port of Leith, the new make or the heart of the whiskey that will be in 10, 15, 20 years time. So in the end, it's all working together. You cannot just have one thing to create a good whiskey. It's all people coming together, all processes, and that new make, but that leads us.
Yeah.
And that's what we want to do here.
It's fascinating to see that kind of journey as it's going on, and look forward to seeing what it results in once the whiskey's ready.
Thank you very much.
It would be easy to think that what happens inside the distillery is solely responsible for creating a whisky's flavour, but there's much more to it than that. We're going to move on to look at what many people think is the most important part in the process of flavour creation. But before we do that, it's worth reflecting that nowadays the whisky industry is practically unrecognisable from the way it was 40 years ago.
The Scotch Malt Whisky Society has brought about a remarkable revival of interest in single malts. Its founder chairman is Philip Hills.
We invented whisky tasting as a leisure pursuit. Before we started, nobody had ever thought of tasting whiskies as you would wines. The idea that an ordinary whisky drinker could discern the flavours in whisky was completely novel. Nobody talked about whisky, and remember, most of the whisky then as now was blended whisky, which was generally drunk with ice and soda. And you can actually drink diesel oil with ice and soda, and it's not too bad. You don't have to prove, but I have actually tried it. The industry was in the doldrums. Markets were falling, and nobody knew why. And the reason was that it was bloody boring. The things that were being said about whisky were the things that had been said for 100 years. And some of them were true, and an awful lot of them weren't true. And we were able to come out there and say, well, it's not like you think it is. It's different. The real thing, the whisky taken in its perfect form, which was at cask strength, is altogether different from the stuff you're getting in a bottle. We were able to go out there and simply tell the honest truth about whisky and say almost everything you know about whisky is untrue. And what we will do is tell you what it's really like, and what it's really like is absolutely wonderful.
So Julian, start by telling me what, in your opinion, makes society whisky unique?
That's an age-old question. Our passion is first and foremost about single cask whisky at cask strength, which means a couple of things. It's going to be intense, it's going to be rich, and a third thing that it means is that it's going to be extremely rare. At cask strength, you're basically hit by a whisky that is roughly over 60% alcohol, so that is quite high. Unlike a lot of bottlings, it gives you the opportunity to decide exactly how much water you want in there. It is also the purest form of whisky, unadulterated, there's nothing added, nothing taken away. Additionally to that, because it's so concentrated, the flavors that you get are absolutely fantastic. They are as robust and as strong as you could ever hope to get from any whisky.
And how does that differ from whisky which people might be more familiar with from the supermarket or from the bar that they go to?
In many respects, these are two different things. Firstly, if you buy something in the supermarket, it is something that is widely available. Single cask isn't. A barrique, a barrel, a butt, you're sort of ranging anywhere between 200 litres and 500 litres. So that means that, especially at cask strength, undiluted, the number of bottles you get out of each single cask is phenomenally limited. So that makes it unique, because once a cask is gone, it's gone. You can never recreate that whiskey, not exactly anyway.
Because every cask is absolutely unique. It's got its individual DNA, its own specific character.
Absolutely.
So what if I told you that one of the biggest mistakes you can make about whiskey is holding preconceptions about your dram before you've even had the chance to taste it? That's largely down to the influence of maturation and the magical transformation that a whiskey can take when it's aged in oak for a substantial amount of time. If you fill 2 single casks in the same distillery, it could be on the same day and even at the same time, they can take on very different characteristics, and that's simply down to the individual cask that it's been aged in. So Ed, give us a basic overview of the maturation process. What's happening when the whiskey goes into the cask?
So when the whiskey goes into the cask, it starts to interact with the wood that the cask's made from. The whiskey, as it heats up and cools down throughout the season, will be moving in and out of the wood. This will allow the whiskey to start to dissolve some of the extractives in the wood, so it will start to pull flavours out of the wood.
The most used casks in the world of whiskey are from the bourbon world and from sherry. What kind of characteristics do they bring?
Bourbon casks, which are probably the most common type of cask used in the Scotch whisky industry, give a lot of the flavours typical of bourbon, unsurprisingly. So they bring a lot of sweetness, coconutty character, vanilla, and they lead to really nice, sweet, mellow whiskies. Whereas sherry brings a lot of the character typical of sherry wine, also some sweetness, some dried fruit character, a lot more richness, a lot more depth, and a deeper colour as well from the European oak. We've got a huge variety of different cask types in our inventory. That might be different sizes. We've got everything from 30 litre all the way up to 500 litre casks. And those different sizes will give different impact and different speed of impact because of the surface area. We've got virgin oak of about 12 different oak species, ex-wine casks of about 30, 40 different types of wine that have been in them. And they'll all bring their own unique flavours along. We probably have close to 200, 300 varietals in our inventory.
And the same spirit could go into a different cask and then take on a completely different character.
Exactly. Even 2 casks of the same type will give us different character. So when you start splitting that out among all those different varieties available to us, the opportunities are really endless.
So we've been through the whole process from start to finish, and this is really what it's all about. It's taken a long time to get here in terms of every stage of the production process and also the time that whiskey has to mature in cask. But you know, it's a special moment when you draw the whiskey from the cask, and that's really when it comes to life, right? Tell us a little bit about this cask in particular.
So this cask is a hybrid American and European oak cask that we had custom made to our specifications in Spain. So this is really interesting because it's going to give us some of the sweeter, traditionally bourbon style American oak characteristics. So we'll get the coconut, the custard, the vanilla, the sweetness, and then we'll get the richness and the tannic background of the European oak, which start to bring in mulling spices. So we'll get a really nice full flavour.
Cheers.
Slanter.
Yeah. Well, immediately in the nose, I'm getting that sherry cask influence. It's maybe not what I would typically expect from this distillery.
Yeah, I mean, we're starting to see a lot of red fruit coming through, some nice gentle baking spices, but it's really backed up with this coconutty, vanilla-y backbone.
Yeah, lovely combination on the nose. Let's have a wee taste. And again, I think it probably challenges your expectation of what a distillery's character might be. If I bought a whiskey from this distillery, I don't think I'd be expecting something like that. It's really pretty different.
By being able to work with our cooperages and specify our own cask types, and by varying them, we can really get magical results.
And even better at cask strength. Straight out the cask, no dilution, no chill filtration, no messing around.
I mean, we've waited a long time to get something that you can't get fresher than this.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. Right, thanks very much, Ed. Cheers.